Hello, everyone. Welcome to Learn English Podcast.
My first day at work. Learn English through story. My first day at work was a whirlwind of emotions, a mix of excitement, nervousness, curiosity, and the faint sting of fear that comes when you step into a completely new world. A world where you are no longer a student or someone who follows instructions casually, but a young professional. Someone who has responsibilities, deadlines, and expectations. And I remember waking up that morning with my heart racing, the sunlight spelling through my bedroom window and hitting my face, reminding me that today would change everything. And I found myself pacing in front of the mirror, adjusting my outfit again and again, trying to make sure that everything about me looked perfect, from my neatly combed hair to my carefully chosen clothes, because I wanted to make a good impression. And as a young woman entering the professional world for the first time, I knew that first impressions mattered more than I had ever realized. And while I had prepared myself mentally over the past few weeks, reading books about workplace etiquette, watching videos about how to behave in an office, and even practicing small talk in English with friends, nothing could fully prepare me for the real thing, the actual experience of walking into a building filled with people I had never met, all of whom seemed to know exactly what they were doing, their confidence radiating in ways that made me feel both inspired and slightly intimidated. And as I stepped onto the bus, my mind raced through all the possibilities of what could happen, wondering if I would make a mistake, if I would say the wrong thing, if I would appear unprepared. But I also felt a thrill that only comes with starting something new, a feeling that perhaps this day could be the beginning of something incredible, something that would shape my career, my future, and even the person I was becoming. And when I arrived at the office, the building towered above me like a giant, glass and steel monument to ambition, its doors sliding open smoothly, as if inviting me into a world that I had long imagined but never actually stepped into. And walking through those doors, I was immediately struck by the hum of activity, the sounds of keyboards tapping, phones ringing, and people talking in calm but purposeful tones. And I remember taking a deep breath, reminding myself that I belonged here as much as anyone else, and that I had earned this position through hard work, determination, and countless hours of preparation. And yet, even with all the preparation, I could not shake the nervous energy buzzing through me, the kind of energy that makes your palms sweat and your stomach flutter like 1,000 butterflies. And as I approached the reception desk, I introduced myself, trying to keep my voice steady, even though I felt my heart racing. And the receptionist greeted me warmly, handing me a visitor badge and pointing me toward the elevator that would take me to the floor where my new team worked. And each step I took toward the elevator felt like a step into the unknown, but also a step toward growth, opportunity, and self-discovery. And when the elevator doors opened on my floor, I was greeted by a modern, bright space filled with desks, computers, and people who looked like they had been working there for years. Their eyes focused, their movements fluid. And I remember feeling both amazed and slightly overwhelmed, wondering how I would fit into this rhythm, this new environment where every action seemed deliberate, every word calculated. And yet, despite the initial anxiety, there was also a sense of excitement, a sense that I was finally stepping into adulthood, taking responsibility for my own life, and learning lessons that no classroom could ever teach. And as I walked to my desk, which had my name neatly printed on a small placard, I noticed the little things that made the office feel real and alive. The stack of documents someone had left by their monitor, the coffee mug with a witty quote, the sticky notes with reminders and motivational messages, and I realized that this was more than just a place of work. It was a place where people invested time, energy, and creativity, where teamwork and communication were essential, and where every day brought a new challenge, a new opportunity to learn, and I felt humbled and eager to be part of it. And shortly after settling at my desk, a colleague came over to introduce herself, her smile warm and reassuring. And she walked me through some basic routines like logging into the computer system, checking emails, and understanding how tasks are assigned. And as we talked, I realized how valuable these initial interactions were, because beyond the technical knowledge, I was learning about the culture of the office, the way people communicated, supported each other, and built relationships that went beyond the work itself. And for a young person entering a professional environment for the first time, these lessons were as important as any technical skill. Because success in the workplace is never just about doing your job. It is also about connecting with people, showing respect, listening carefully, and being adaptable. And as the morning progressed, I found myself slowly relaxing, the initial tension easing as I became familiar with the space, the sounds, and the flow of activity around me. And then came the first official meeting I had to attend, which filled me with both dread and anticipation, because I knew that in this meeting, I would be expected to contribute, to share ideas, and to show that I could think critically and communicate effectively. And as I walked into the conference room, I noticed the polished wooden table, the projector displaying slides, and the focused expressions on everyone's faces. And I reminded myself to breathe, to listen carefully, and to speak confidently, even if I stumbled over a word or two, because making an attempt was better than staying silent. And as the discussion began, I was surprised at how much I understood, how many points I could follow, and how even small contributions like nodding in agreement or asking clarifying questions allowed me to participate and feel part of the team. And by the end of the meeting, I felt a surge of pride, a sense that I had not only survived my first challenge, but also learned valuable lessons about professional communication, collaboration, and the importance of preparation. And when I returned to my desk afterward, I noticed how the morning had passed quickly, each hour packed with small victories, tiny successes, and moments of learning that, while subtle, added up to a significant personal achievement. And as I checked emails, organized files, and completed my first minor task assignments, I felt a growing sense of confidence. The kind of confidence that comes from doing, from participating, from taking action even when the outcome is uncertain. And I realized that this first day was not about perfection, but about engagement, learning, and showing initiative. And as the afternoon continued, I was introduced to more colleagues, each encounter teaching me something new about communication, workplace etiquette, and teamwork. And I quickly learned the importance of observing others, listening to how they spoke, noting the tone, the pace, and the way humor was used to build rapport. And for a young person like me, these small observations were invaluable because they provided insights into how to navigate social dynamics in a professional setting, how to express ideas respectfully, and how to contribute without overstepping. And when lunchtime arrived, I joined a group of colleagues in the cafeteria where casual conversation flowed, and I had the opportunity to practice small talk, sharing a bit about myself, my background, and my excitement for this new role. And I realized that social skills were just as important as technical skills, because building relationships is the foundation of a successful career. And while the initial moments had been intimidating, by now I was feeling more at ease, more connected, and more confident in my ability to navigate this new world. And as the day continued, I encountered small challenges, like understanding the software, remembering procedures, and keeping track of multiple tasks. But each challenge became an opportunity to learn, to ask questions, and to grow. And I was grateful for the patience and support of my colleagues, who guided me without judgment, allowing me to make mistakes and correct them, which is exactly what every young learner needs on their first day, the chance to learn by doing in a safe, supportive environment. And as the afternoon drew to a close, I reflected on everything I had experienced, from the initial nervous steps into the office to the moments of engagement in meetings, conversations with colleagues, and the completion of my first minor tasks. And I realized that my first day at work was not just about the work itself, but about self-discovery, about learning how to adapt, communicate, and thrive in a professional environment. And the lessons I had learned in a single day were more than I could have imagined, teaching me about confidence, resilience, curiosity, and the importance of taking initiative. And as I packed up my things to leave, I felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration, knowing that I had survived, learned, and begun a journey that would shape my career, my skills, and even my personal growth. And walking out of the office building, the cool evening air brushing against my face, I knew that this was only the beginning, that each day would bring new challenges, opportunities, and lessons, and that by embracing each experience, staying curious, and remaining open to learning, I could grow into the professional, confident, and capable woman I aspired to be. And reflecting on the day, I felt proud of my courage, my adaptability, and my willingness to step into the unknown. And I realized that the first day at work is a powerful metaphor for life itself, a reminder that new beginnings are always accompanied by uncertainty, but also by the chance to learn, improve, and shine. And as I walked home, replaying moments from the day in my mind, I felt a sense of accomplishment, a feeling that comes from knowing you faced something new, embraced it, and came out stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the future. And I promised myself that I would carry this attitude forward, treating every day at work as a chance to learn, connect, and grow. And that my first day, though challenging, would always remain a source of inspiration, a reminder of how courage, curiosity, and a willingness to learn can turn nervous beginnings into meaningful progress. And as I closed my eyes that night, exhausted but happy, I knew that I had taken the first step on a journey that would continue to shape me, teach me, and prepare me for the many opportunities and adventures that awaited in my professional life. The next morning, I woke up with a mixture of anticipation and curiosity, knowing that the second day at work would bring a whole new set of experiences. And as I prepared myself, I realized that the nervousness I had felt on the first day had transformed into a determined excitement, a sense that I now understood the rhythm of the office a little better. And while there was still much to learn, I felt more confident in my ability to adapt, communicate, and thrive in a professional environment. And as I walked into the building, I noticed the familiar faces of my colleagues, some of whom smiled and greeted me warmly. And I responded with a smile, realizing that small gestures of friendliness could create a sense of belonging, a feeling that makes even the most intimidating workplace feel like a community. And when I reached my desk, I was greeted with a welcome note from my team leader, encouraging me to ask questions and reminding me that learning takes time. And I felt a surge of gratitude, knowing that I was surrounded by people who wanted to see me succeed. And as I logged into my computer, I reviewed the tasks assigned for the day, noticing that they were slightly more challenging than yesterday, which made me nervous at first, but I reminded myself that growth always comes from stepping out of your comfort zone, and that every small challenge I faced was an opportunity to improve, learn, and gain confidence. And as I began working, I encountered a series of emails, documents, and instructions that required careful attention. And at first, I felt overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information. But then I remembered a strategy I had learned from a mentor, which was to prioritize, take notes, and tackle one task at a time. And as I applied this method, I noticed how my productivity increased and how manageable even the most complex assignments became when approached systematically. And while working, I overheard conversations around me, noticing the natural flow of professional English. And I took mental notes on phrases, expressions, and vocabulary that were new to me, realizing that immersion is one of the fastest ways to learn. Because by listening, observing, and engaging, my brain was absorbing not just the words, but also the context in which they were used. And this kind of practical learning, far beyond what textbooks can offer, was both fascinating and effective. And I began to understand that improving English was not just about memorizing grammar or vocabulary lists, but about engaging with real people, real tasks, and real communication. And each interaction, even a simple exchange of greetings or clarifying a task, contributed to my fluency, my confidence, and my professional competence. And as the morning progressed, I was invited to attend a training session led by a senior colleague. And this session was an eye-opening experience because it not only explained technical aspects of the job, but also emphasized teamwork, problem-solving, and communication, showing me that the workplace is a complex ecosystem where every person, every action, and every decision is interconnected. And as I listened, I realized the importance of asking questions, seeking clarification, and observing others, because these behaviors are signs of engagement, intelligence, and commitment. And the senior colleague encouraged us to collaborate, brainstorm, and share ideas. And while I was initially hesitant to speak up, I reminded myself that contributing, even in small ways, is better than staying silent. And when I did voice my opinion on a minor point, I was met with encouragement and constructive feedback. And this small interaction boosted my confidence significantly, making me feel like a valued member of the team. And I began to understand that the workplace is not just about individual performance, but also about collaboration, mutual respect, and shared goals. And that learning to navigate these dynamics is as important as any technical skill. And for a young professional, these lessons are invaluable because they teach you not only how to do your job, but also how to thrive within a team, build relationships, and communicate effectively in a professional setting. And as the session ended, I felt a sense of accomplishment, having absorbed new knowledge, practiced listening and speaking, and taken steps towards becoming an active participant rather than a passive observer. And when I returned to my desk, I applied some of the strategies I had just learned, organizing my workflow, setting priorities, and collaborating with a colleague on a small project. And the experience was enlightening because I realized that asking for help, sharing ideas, and contributing to solutions not only improved my own performance, but also strengthened relationships, built trust, and demonstrated my commitment to the team. And as I continued working, I found myself adapting to the pace of the office, noticing patterns, understanding expectations, and gradually feeling more comfortable in my role. And each small success, whether completing a task efficiently, asking a thoughtful question, or helping a colleague, reinforced my confidence and motivated me to keep improving. And by mid-afternoon, I was invited to join a group discussion on a project, which initially made my heart race because I knew I would have to speak, share ideas, and perhaps face criticism. but I reminded myself that courage is built through action and that learning from mistakes is far more valuable than avoiding them. And when I participated, I noticed that my ideas were appreciated, that feedback was constructive, and that my ability to contribute grew with each interaction. And I realized that confidence is not something that magically appears, but something developed through repeated exposure, practice, and reflection. And that even small contributions, repeated consistently, can lead to significant personal and professional growth. And as the afternoon continued, I noticed the rhythm of the office, the natural ebb and flow of activity, collaboration, and communication. And I began to anticipate tasks, understand priorities, and manage my time more effectively. And the more I adapted, the more capable I felt, and the more engaged I became in the work itself, realizing that competence grows hand in hand with confidence, and that each new challenge, question, or interaction is a stepping stone towards mastery. And as the day progressed, I also discovered the importance of observing not just the work, but also the interpersonal dynamics, noticing how colleagues supported each other, shared knowledge, and maintained a positive atmosphere. And I understood that being successful is not just about doing your own work well, but also about contributing to a culture of collaboration, encouragement, and respect. And I made a mental note to cultivate these qualities in my own behavior, because they are essential for long-term growth and professional fulfillment. And as the workday neared its end, I reflected on the progress I had made, the skills I had practiced, and the lessons I had absorbed. And I realized that my second day, while perhaps less overwhelming than the first, had been just as transformative, because it had shown me how to engage more fully, communicate more effectively, and approach challenges with curiosity, resilience, and confidence. And I felt a growing sense of belonging, knowing that I was not just learning tasks, but also learning how to be a professional, a teammate, and a communicator. And these lessons, though subtle, would serve as the foundation for my growth in the weeks, months, and years to come. And as I packed my bag to leave, I felt proud of the courage I had shown, the progress I had made, and the person I was becoming. And I realized that each day at work is a journey of discovery, learning, and personal development. And that by embracing each experience, staying curious, and committing to continuous improvement, I could grow not only in skill, but also in character, resilience, and confidence. And I promised myself to approach every challenge, conversation, and task with the same energy, focus, and determination, knowing that these small, daily actions accumulate into meaningful progress. And as I walked home, replaying moments from the day in my mind, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that my second day had reinforced the lessons of the first, expanded my understanding of the workplace, and strengthened my commitment to learning, growth, and success. And I knew that this journey was just beginning, that each day would bring new challenges, opportunities, and lessons, and that by embracing them fully, I could transform my first days of nervous uncertainty into a foundation of confidence, competence, and professional growth. And I reflected further and realized that improving English, understanding professional culture, and building meaningful connections all go hand in hand. And that by practicing communication, listening carefully, asking questions, and engaging thoughtfully, I was developing skills that would last a lifetime. And that the courage, curiosity, and determination I demonstrated during these early days would shape not just my career, but also the person I was becoming. And this understanding filled me with a sense of purpose, excitement, and readiness to face whatever challenges awaited me in the days ahead. And as the sun set, casting a warm glow over the city, I felt grateful for the lessons, opportunities, and experiences of my second day, knowing that every moment, every interaction, and every challenge was preparing me for a successful, fulfilling, and meaningful journey in my professional life. And I went to sleep that night with a heart full of hope, anticipation, and determination, ready to wake up the next morning and continue building the skills, confidence, and relationships that would carry me forward, knowing that my first days at work, though challenging and sometimes intimidating, were also the most valuable lessons I could receive, teaching me not only about the job itself, but about resilience, adaptability, courage, communication, and the importance of embracing growth every single day. As the days, weeks, and months went by, I reflected on that very first morning when I stepped into the office feeling nervous, uncertain, and full of questions. And I realized that everything I had experienced, from the initial anxieties, the small victories, the mistakes I made, the lessons I learned, and the encouragement I received from colleagues, has shaped me in ways I could never have imagined. And the most important lesson of all was that growth, confidence, and success do not come from waiting for the perfect moment or avoiding challenges, but from showing up, being willing to learn, embracing discomfort, and taking action even when fear is present. And as I looked back, I understood that my first day at work was not just a day of starting a job, but a day that symbolized the power of courage, perseverance, and self-belief. And I realized that every young person stepping into a new opportunity, whether it is a job, a class, or a personal goal, can use the same principles to overcome fear, gain knowledge, build confidence, and grow. And that by being curious, asking questions, practicing every skill, observing carefully, and remaining open to learning, we can transform any initial nervousness into strength, any mistake into a lesson, and any challenge into an opportunity. And now, as I continue my journey in the professional world, I carry with me the memories, experiences, and lessons from that first day, knowing that the skills I developed, the relationships I built, and the mindset I nurtured are the foundation for everything that comes next. And I hope that anyone listening to this story understands that your first day, no matter how overwhelming it may feel, is just the beginning of a path filled with growth, opportunity, and the chance to discover how capable, resilient, and talented you truly are. And that by embracing every moment, learning from every experience, and believing in your own ability to adapt and succeed, you too can turn your first day into a powerful starting point for a lifetime of achievement, confidence, and meaningful growth.